welcome to this introduction to the Strawberry Thanksgiving and Communion. Um, my name is Therese Samuel. I use the pronouns she and her, and I am currently on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe Nation, the people of the Three Fires, Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi nations. And I give thanks to Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, the people of Chippewas of Saugeen and Chippewas of Nawash unceded territory as the traditional keepers of this land. It is land included in Treaty 18 of 1818, and I pray that all that I offer today and in my daily life is part of building uh, right relations between Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples in this land, and I am non-Indigenous. I'm going to start us out with a little bit of grounding time. It's kind of prayerful. It's a chance for acknowledgement of territory. You will have a chance to name and acknowledge for yourself the the people for whom the land where you are is traditional territory. The chat is turned off. That is to make it accessible for everybody who there are some here who use screen readers, and so the chat is not helpful for the whole community in that situation. So you are able to chat to the hosts if you have a concern. I'd invite you to specifically reach out to Michelle Pettick, who is the main tech host. Introductions will happen a little bit more in a few minutes, but let us just begin with grounding ourselves. And you may wish to turn off your video for this time, or just ignore it, pretend it's not on. Ground yourself. Notice the support of the chair that you are in, with your feet flat on the ground, if that works for you. You can ground through your feet, or you may ground through your sit bones in the chair. And notice that your connection through the chair and the floor connects you to the building, which is connected to the ground, and through the ground, connected to all that is in the ground and on the ground, and all who lives in it and on it. And you are connected to Creator God. Take a moment to give thanks. And as you are giving thanks, notice your breathing. Know that the air that you breathe connects you to the air in the room, which is connected to the air around you and to the air outside of the building and to the atmosphere that goes all the way around the planet Earth. And through this air, you are connected to all that is in the air and the winged ones and all that lives in the air, and you are connected to Creator God. Take a moment to give thanks. And as you give thanks, notice the water. Closest to you is the water in your body, in the moisture that allows you to blink your eyes, and the moisture in your nose and mouth. And the air that you breathe contains water too. And you are connected to the water in the air and the water that flows through the ground underneath you, and the waters that flow in rivers and streams and that collects in lakes and seas and oceans. And you are connected to all that is in the water, all that lives in the water. And you are connected to Creator God. Take a moment to give thanks. And notice your energy, the power you have to move, the power to breathe, the power to think, this spark of life, the electricity that is the spark of life in you, the fire of life in you. Connect you to the energy that is all around, the lights in the sky, the lights in the lights that light the building that you are in. And through all of this energy of light and fire, you are connected to the energy of the creatures of the earth, and you are connected to Creator God. Take a moment to give thanks. And in your gratitude, notice that in creation and in God, you are connected to the people around the earth, to the peoples in the land where you are. Notice the people around you in the space where you are and in this gathering online. Acknowledge with gratitude the goodness in relationships that you have with people in this land. And let us together draw to mind the first peoples who have inhabited this land where each of us is since time immemorial. This, for some of us, that that is ancestors and includes yourselves. For others of us, like me, a relative newcomer to this land, I acknowledge the newness of my people's presence here. And let us notice the relationships that exist between Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples in this land. Notice the blessings in these relationships and notice the brokenness in these relationships. And as we are grounded in gratitude and blessings, let us also acknowledge the harms caused to Indigenous peoples with the arrival of European settlers in this land. And let us acknowledge the ways the broken relationships impact each of us, the way the broken relationships impact you. And let us each offer ourselves again as a channel of healing for ourselves and for others in these relationships. And may we remind ourselves of gratitude for earth and air and water and fire and the presence of the Creator's love in all of this. As we are part of healing, we do not do this alone. God is with us. Thanks be to God. Ah, man. And I am really very pleased to welcome Adrian Jacobs. And while Michelle is spotlighting Adrian, I'm going to once again remind everybody to have some juice and bread ready and close at hand. Toward the end of our time together, we will be celebrating communion together, and you will be invited to use the elements that you have present with you. Adrian, hello and welcome. Welcome to this space with mostly United Church of Canada people. I know that there are some folks from other denominations who have gathered with us. Welcome. And I think we are mostly non-Indigenous people, but I know that there are some Indigenous people and church or churches who have gathered with us. Um, and Adrian, I'll just introduce you. Well, I know you will introduce yourself, but I will also introduce you. Adrian, as I know, is a Cayuga First Nation, Turtle Clan, a member of Six Nations, Haudenosaunee Confederacy of the Grand River. And Adrian serves the Christian Reformed Church in North America as the senior leader for Indigenous justice and reconciliation. Um, and Adrian, in the past, some people in the United Church know you because you, not too long ago, served as keeper of the circle, or also known as principal of Sandy Soto Spiritual Center, which is the Indigenous Ministry Training School for the United Church of Canada. Adrian, I appreciate that you are multi-talented, folks. Adrian is an artist, a writer, an Indigenous advocate, an entrepreneur, a public speaker. And it's a real blessing to have Adrian here with us. Adrian, it's a blessing to have you here with us to lead us through an introduction to this spiritual covenant and to celebrate a strawberry Thanksgiving and communion with us. And to tell us a little bit about some events that folks can join in on. And Adrian, I am grateful that you accepted the tobacco that I offered to you, and I will find a way to bring this tobacco to you. I offered it in the name of the Creator and asked if Adrian would bring this wisdom and teaching to us. And Adrian accepted the tobacco, which I understand means that he said yes, accepted the invitation. And Adrian, I also offer you a gift. And sometimes people find the gifts I offer a little bit unconventional. I don't know, but I like to offer something practical and something that kind of connects to me. So I'm offering to you. It's called Hindle's Easy Cut Pruning Shears, and they're pruning shears, and so there's something that you can use when you're connecting with nature. But they're from Hindle's Clarksburg Hardware, and it's kind of an institution in the place where I live. If you ever visit Thornbury and Clarksburg, you need to visit this place. And James Hindle, who is known throughout the area, very, very nice gentleman. He designed this and had it made specifically for them. So this is a little piece of the southern Georgian Bay area that I'm coming to you from. And I will find a way to get this to you either through Canada Post or in person if I can do that. So thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Therese. I have land at Six Nations, and so my pruning has been with an axe right now. As I get more into the land, I'm sure that I'll make use of the more fine-tuned the thing that you've given to me. So thank you very much. I appreciate that. I want to say that I really appreciate everybody who's here. I feel like I've come back to my United Church folk, who I became very familiar with over the last, from 2012 to 2022, but also just in my growing up at Six Nations, the various United Churches there as well. So special greetings to Grand River as you're joining us here. And some of the questions that we are asking are questions for allies to think about. They may be a different question for us to think about. I've always had to do that in my work as Indigenous justice and reconciliation. Lots of people in churches want to know, what can I do? Or what do you think about this or that? And it comes from their perspective as somebody who wants to do justice because they didn't know about the injustice, and so they're on a learning journey. Our Indigenous people know the stories of injustice, so that's something that we have different questions to bring to the issue. I want to talk to you about the land claim conflict between Six Nations and Canada and Ontario. and the municipalities. And I want to talk to you about a solution that was proposed at the very beginning of my journey of working with Mennonite Central Committee Ontario as a community liaison for the Aboriginal Neighbours Program. I was pastoring there at Six Nations, and our church there is on Chiefswood Road, right across from the Hills Auto Body. And it was just something that has been a part of an 18-year conversation with various churches, and it's beginning to get some momentum. So I want to talk to you about it, and I want to share a PowerPoint. You can minimize your own picture here so that you don't kind of take up your screen unnecessarily. I'm trying to, there, okay. Again, this comes as a solution from the 2006 conflict at Douglas Creek Estates, renamed Gunestado by our people. Gunestado is Mohawk word for the protected place. And then in 2020, during COVID, there was another development that was happening outside of Caledonia, Mackenzie Meadows, and that was also protested and stopped, and our people renamed it 1492 Landback Lane. But it's the same land claim area. In 1987, we put it into the court system, and because the developments were happening anyway, in spite of it being in the court system, some people protested it and eventually put a stop to it, and et cetera. So I want to tell you that story, but also centering on the solution that was offered, because the solution came fairly early on as well, or at least a step towards justice. So we are all right now in the dish with one spoon territory. I have a copy of the dish with one spoon wampum belt. And the idea here is that the land is the dish that feeds us all. So in 1701, all of Southern Ontario was an agreement between the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe folk, and then the English who were in the area too, that we would share the land and the bounty of the land as we did forever. Like this was a concept that was not just starting in 1701, it was something that we always lived by. But we always reminded ourselves of these things, and especially the newcomers, that the land is the dish that feeds us all. We need to take care of it. And there's one spoon of access in this dish as well. The actual territory covers Southern Ontario, south of the Trent Severn Waterway, but then Western New York, a bit of Western Pennsylvania, all of Ohio, all of Indiana, the lower part of Illinois, and the lower part of Michigan. This is where the hunting territory for Haudenosaunee people were and also lived, but also the Anishinaabe nations as well. It was also called the Beaver Hunting Grounds. Now, out of that territory in 1784, because we supported the British and the American Revolution, and our homelands were in the New York Finger Lakes area and all the way east to along the Mohawk River to Albany, because our territory was there and because many of us supported the British in the American Revolution. When the Americans and the British drew the line between them, they drew it behind us. So our people decided to, move out of that area. It was unsafe for us, and Joseph Brant made some arrangements with the Governor General, who was the King's representative, for 6 miles on either side of the Grand River, from the mouth at Port Maitland at Lake Erie up to Dundalk, Ontario, to be about 950,000 acres compensation for the 8 million acres that we lost in New York State. And the conflict in Caledonia concerns the lands along what in 1835 was conceived of as Plank Road. Canada, Ontario wanted to be able to transport goods from Port Dover on Lake Erie through our territory up into Hamilton. And then they could, if they were shipped further, they could go on Lake Ontario, avoiding the whole Niagara, the Niagara River and the falls there, and the whole issue with the escarpment. But this was an overland route. And so from Halderbrook Road on the north side of Caledonia, that marks the edge of the 12 miles, through to Hagersville. That's the other side of the 12 miles. The Grand River flows right through Caledonia. On the western part, in this area called Plank Road, the two developments were stopped. And so when we first spoke to the Crown, we said, we'll lease the land along either side of this road for a half mile on either side, and we'll do it for 21 years. We'll have 7-year renewals, and so there would be 2 renewals. And then when you lease something, the land comes back to you. So that's what our intention was. But somehow that was all lost. And if you notice this orange spot south of Brantford, that's all that's left now, 45,000 acres. So we lost about 900 million acres, or 900,000 acres of the rest of the territory. And it was similar to what happened with the Plank Road lands. They were basically stolen. And so we protested it. And these 2 ladies here, Dawn Smith in the sunglasses, and then the lady holding the sign, Janie Jameson, in February of 2006, they said, well, even if it's the situation is in the courts and they're still developing, and we've already protested and told them about this land, let's go stop construction. So they did. They stood in front of the bulldozers, and the workers there at Douglas Creek Estates turned off their machines and went home. So the developer then got an injunction, and this is the Ministry of the Attorney General trying to read the riot act to our people. And our people are not really pleased with all of this. Nobody would receive or take that injunction. And so there was and what happened was throughout everything, the Caledonia Baptist Church was right next to this place, which was at the kind of the gateway of Ganestado. Right next to that was the Caledonia Baptist Church. And on April the 19th, pastors from 6 nations, Caledonia, New Credit, and Springvale got together, and we talked about the land claim issue. And a lot of people didn't know the story. So when I told them the story of the land, they immediately wanted me to, have a public meeting and tell everybody in Caledonia, because they didn't know the story of the land, which is typical for all non-Indigenous communities next to reserves. And so after the injunction was served and nobody obeyed it, then there was a 200 riot police came at 5 o'clock in the morning, or 10 to 5 in the morning on April the 20th. And then they arrested, of the 25 people that were there on the land, they were asleep in tents and trailers, etc. They managed to arrest 16. And then our people had cell phones. So we contacted our own people, and hundreds of people came to the site. And then on Highway 6 or Argyle Road, they made a tire fire with a huge black column of smoke, which is an international sign of distress. And I was coming home from Toronto, driving through Waterdown, where I live right now, and I saw over to my left this column of smoke, and I knew it was our people calling for help from Caledonia. And I went there later that night and talked with my cousin, who is a lawyer and who is the head of Six Nations Lands and Resources. And we talked about what was happening there. This is from Victoria Day, 2006. We agreed to take down the barricades, and the Caledonia people did. After we did that, they created a human barricade, so it was another conflict. And during this conflict, one of the elders, we pulled the barricade back across the road, and then one of the elders put a evergreen branch out in a war club and says, well, whatever you want. If you want peace, we can work that out. We had opened up the way, and we were letting people through, answering your objection to our protection of our people by blocking the road. And if you want to fight about it, we're ready to fight. Nobody picked up the peace branch. And so, one of the things that is the responsibility of the women is that they're stewards of the land. So they're locking arms here at the front, and the people are supporting them. And so negotiations began. And you can see here that the dish with one spoon has been brought out, an old copy of it. The two-row wampum is also brought out, our original agreement with the Dutch in 1613, the silver covenant chain, and then a more modern copy of the two-row wampum. And so the traditional system led the negotiations, backed up and supported by the elected system. And Mennonite Central Committee wanted somebody to educate their churches, so I did that from 2007 to 2010. And Mennonite Central Committee introduced me to the traditional council at Onondaga Longhouse at Six Nations. And after that introduction, I met with Rick Hill, and he asked me one question. He says, do the churches pay taxes? And I said, no. I knew he was referring to property taxes. So he said, wouldn't it be great if we had a spiritual covenant with the churches, where the churches could acknowledge Six Nations jurisdiction over their land? They could have a renewable 99-year lease and continue their spiritual work. But if the church ever decommissioned the land, could return to Six Nations. So we held a couple of events at Six Nations at the church I was pastoring there to talk about this spiritual covenant. So we called it the Strawberry Festival Corporate Repentance Communion Service in 2007. We had a Maori singer who did her Maori thing, and just really impactful, from New Zealand. And then Gabriel Geffen, who is a Messianic Jew from the old quarter of Jerusalem, at that event. So we thought it was momentous. The next year we had another, we called it Strawberry Thanksgiving ceremony and communion service. And that's where we set up the church like a longhouse, and we opened with a Haudenosaunee Thanksgiving address. So those were the two events that we held. And basically I continued that conversation over those many years, both Rick and I. But in 2020, we get land back lane, same land, same court injunction, same police raid, same harassment, etc. We renamed the place 1492 Land Back Lane. Same tire fire, international sign of distress. But a younger generation, led by Schuyler Williams, who was the focus of all the charges for all of the stopping of the construction there. And eventually the judge basically exonerated him and said, well, he's doing the work of his own laws to protect the land for his people. So they dismissed the charges or acquitted. I don't know what the legal term was, but he was off the hook for all the charges that were levied against him. So my question all the time to all the churches is, what could have happened instead of more protests in 2020 if churches took up Rick Hill's 2007 offer of a spiritual covenant with churches? So last year, July the 6th, we held another event, Strawberry Thanksgiving and Communion, at the Six Nations Polytechnic. Sterling Avenue Mennonite Church says, okay, we'll take the first step towards this spiritual covenant and we'll give 1% of our annual income. So they brought a check for $4,000. 160 people attended. There were 54 churches represented, 11 denominations, 13 unions, which were teachers' unions, labor unions, and social justice groups. And then we held another one this past year. We went up to the Rockaway Mennonite Collegiate in Kitchener. The Polytechnic wasn't available at the time. So we held another event to talk about the idea. 170 people attended. Again, 11 denominations: Mennonite, United, Anglican, Catholic, Lutheran, Baptist, CRC, Eucharist, which is a Baptist church, Methodist, Wild Church, Unitarian, and others. And then 6 institutions: credit unions, universities, Indigenous organizations, more than 44 churches. The current fund that's being held at Six Nations Polytechnic is $24,000. I haven't updated it since April. And my own home church at Meadowlands Fellowship in Ancaster has committed 1% of their annual income as well, $7,000. So we're having another event in June the 13th, 2026 at the Six Nations Polytechnic. We're going to have it in person, so about 200 people capacity there, but we're also going to stream it online as well. So inviting churches all across the country in this fund. It's held by Six Nations Polytechnic because they have the Indigenous Knowledge Center there, which is geared to the restoration of Haudenosaunee culture. You can actually get a Bachelor of Oglala languages, Mohawk or Ganyahanga or Cayuga language. They are there to preserve and nurture Indigenous knowledge and wisdom, nurturing and fostering community-based research that incorporates Indigenous knowledge in all fields. And the reason we chose that is because Six Nations Polytechnic is not partisan, not a part of either governing systems. They're nonpartisan, and because the church, through its assimilation process, has aided the loss of our languages and cultures, they can now be a part of their restoration. So we told people how to give and how to designate it, how to send e-transfers, and then just to contact Six Nations Polytechnic to learn more about them. So this principle, Grand River, would be directly kind of in this tract, and all the churches that are in that surveyed 950,000 kilometers or acres rather. But the principle can be applied to anywhere in Canada. So a church could establish a covenant with the nearest First Nations community. In Winnipeg, 3 Mennonite churches that I spoke to about the spiritual covenant have also pledged 1% of their annual income to the there are 4 urban reserves and there's many Indigenous community organizations in Winnipeg. So that's what their dialogue is going on. Meadowvale Community Church in Mississauga already has an ongoing relationships with the Mississaugas of the New Credit Reserve. So we just encourage them to continue that. And if they've got a relationship with them, just to foster it. And the Southridge Community Church with campuses in St. Catharines, Vineland, and Ridgeway are beginning a dialogue with the Fort Erie Native Friendship Center and perhaps another organization in their community. So I just wanted to say that that's what this is all about, giving an opportunity for people to actually do something tangible, to say, justice is something I can do. Don't just apologize to me and go away. Don't just steal my land and continue to do nothing about it. How about, responding to a tangible opportunity to, enact some justice and be a part of this. So we're inviting you to possibly come to the Six Nations Polytechnic or stream it online next year, June 13, 2026. And So we're glad for the United Churches that did attend, and we also spoke at Nations Uniting, and we did Zoom with the folks that they normally connect with regularly too. So we're just glad to be able to do that. And now we'd like to have a breakout group to be to give you an opportunity with at least 4 people to talk about a couple of questions. It's always a personal question to me. What could I do? And not just necessarily this specific thing with Six Nations, but what could I do to respond to the Indigenous call for justice and relationship? Because, you know, if your church is close to the Grand River Tract or in the Grand River Tract, that's one thing. But if you're closer to Rama or to Sarnia or to other Indigenous communities, what can I do to, you know, respond to the call that's coming from the Indigenous community for justice and relationship? And then another question that could be done as well is, what could your church do to respond to this same thing and this idea of reparations? So I guess Michelle will send us into a breakout group for about 10 minutes, and then we'll come back for general questions and answers. And after that, we'll observe communion together.
Thank you so much, Adrian. Okay, folks, I've prepared the rooms and I'm going to send you forth now. Hi there, it's Michelle Pettick speaking, tech host for this event. Welcome back. I hope your discussion was fulsome. We're going to do a Q&A with Adrian now. So if you would like to ask a question, please use the reactions button and raise your hand. Reactions button is normally at the bottom of your screen. If you're on a mobile device, it might be in the top right-hand corner. Or you can physically raise your hand like this, and John Egger will look for you. Or you can, if you don't want to speak out loud, you can just type the question to me, and I will read it out for you. Okay, so I'm going to hand it over back to Adrian. And I see that we have a question from Pat. So let's hear from Pat. Pat, do you want to unmute yourself, please? There you go. Go ahead, Pat.
Yes, Adrian. The question I had was, when we ask or we make this 1% donation, does it go to the land issue in Six Nation area, or do we partner with the reserve, the Indigenous community that's in our own area, and they pick something they'd like to do? I don't know that Armstrong has any land issues. Other than that, I know that they have not nearly as much territory as they used to, of course.
Yeah, I think it's up to the relationship that you want to continue to develop. This specific thing covers the Grand River Tract, 950 acres, and churches within that, you know, that's specific to that. But like I said, it's a desire to foster this across the country. So my own church at Meadowlands in Ancaster, it's outside of that direct area, but it has chosen to respond to the justice issue by contributing. And 1% is only a suggestion. It doesn't really come from any particular thing from the spiritual covenant. The Six Nations community didn't say anything about 1%. It was in dialogue. The idea generally is that property taxes are about 1% of property value. That's the only kind of connection to 1%. So it would be up to you developing a relationship with whatever community is closest to your community, and they could choose to do otherwise. They could have other means of what does that reparations look like.
Pat, can you unmute, please?
Mm-hmm.
Thanks. Go ahead and respond if you need to.
Good.
You're done? You're good?
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much, Pat. Anybody else on the floor? I got Diane Dick.
This is just a general question. I don't know even if Adrian, you'd have it at your fingertips. So I'm just asking. Quite a while ago now, in one of the Broadview reports, the magazine, there was a couple that had land, and I don't know whether it was part of land back, and actually the land was given back while they were still, like, they were going to give it back in their will, but they actually gave it back, I think, a bit ahead. And I don't remember the details. I wonder if anyone does. I thought that I really enjoyed that article, and it opened me to the idea of what land back was about. Now, if anybody can comment on that, or you, Adrian, you're kind of looking like you know, so that would be great. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that, because I've forgotten some of the details. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Diane.
One of the things that happens when people give back parcels of land, the federal government is not very cooperative to return it to the Six Nations community, partly because it's enmeshed, usually enmeshed in the property tax regime. And so it's hard to untangle that directly. So we've actually had land in court decisions given back to Six Nations. We thought it would just come back to us as reserve land. And for decades, it carried tax debt on it. And we lost the land because the tax debts weren't paid. So people can actually do that, give it back to Six Nations, but it would be a difficult, a bit of a challenge to figure out how that could then benefit the people of Six Nations. Now, there are other land back movements in the US and Canada. Different parcels of land have actually gone back to the community. Some churches on the reserve who have closed, the land is back in the reserves community, land network. So yeah, that's just a bit of an answer to that.
Thank you so much, Adrian. I see Joe and then Shirley next. Joe, can you please unmute?
Sure. Thank you for this opportunity, Adrian. So I'm a minister at a Waterloo church, a bit removed from on the Haldeman track, but a bit removed actually from the Six Nations community, and we have Indigenous led and run nonprofits in our area. I'm just wondering about your opinion with that 1% of using some of that 1% for local Indigenous run nonprofits, whether that goes against the spirit of the spiritual covenant or how you see that fitting. I don't know.
Yeah, Sterling Avenue Mennonite Church is in Kitchener. And actually you're on either block 1, 2, 3, or 4 of Six Nations land claim. They're in the courts. So they also have relationships with local Indigenous organizations and community, and they're building their relationship there too. So I don't know how they may settle that. They've chosen in this case that 1% of their income goes to the spiritual covenant, so it goes to Six Nations Polytechnic. But I know that they're involved with the Clarence Kakaji, who's a good friend of mine, and Dave Skeen, who's in the area as well. And we don't have any objection to people doing that as well. I'm just trying in my best sharing, maintaining the integrity of what Rick Hill proposed for the Grand River Track. So I will, always convey that. But I also know that even in the track, like for example, the Mississaugas of the New Credit really got muscled out of their property in Mississauga. Like they, in a way they just were not at the force of arms, but it was, very strong pressure from Upper Canada and the settlers. And then they sought refuge with us. And there are 5 concessions of our area that we said, come on over here. You can have, this land, because we understood the whole of Southern Ontario was dish with one spoon. So us as Indigenous people don't have a problem with one another. They're even buying back land on the Plank Road, which is part of our land claim, but we're not fighting them in court about it because we know that it's shared territory. And so that's not a problem. So I just think that people should recognize that, and to me, it's like you have closer proximity to Indigenous people and right there, and it would be good and right to engage with that. I know Sterling is doing both, so yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joe. Okay, I see Shirley Irish. Can you please unmute, Shirley?
Yes, actually, my questions are pretty much the same as Joe's. I'm at First United in Waterloo, and we had a presentation at our church from the local land back. I can't probably have a piece of paper here that we could donate to the people that well, they had a camp in Willow Creek Park, also known as Victoria Park, and they came. And so, are you suggesting, Adrian, that I try to have our congregation give a little bit to each of those, to the Polytechnic as the spiritual covenant, but is it not? Yeah, and maybe something to the land back.
Yeah. For me, for my thinking is that, as I said, we're not in competition with other Indigenous people, although the land there is in the court system, so there, regardless of what happens there, it's in the court system too, for Six Nations. If you go to sixnations.ca, there's a couple of booklets that identify the land there and gives the case of it being in the courts. So, and Canada is forever kind of balking at solving anything. So that's a long ways off into the future probably too. So to me, it's like, it's whatever your church decides and however that relationship goes. I'm doing my part to let Indigenous people know about our perspective on the land too, and not from the standpoint of saying we're against you, but they just need to understand the larger picture, that there is a court case that covers the land that we're talking about there in that area. So
our area too. I mean, the Willow.
Yes. If you go to sixnations.ca, there's a booklet there called there's 2 booklets on the land claim, and they talk about blocks 1, 2, 3, and 4, which covers the Kitchener area, and it tells you what our case is for the land. We say basically that we've never surrendered that land, and that it was supposed to be leased out, and we were going to use the money for the perpetual care and maintenance of Six Nations. So that's, that's one reality. So I'm a both and person. So I don't necessarily say either or.
But I kind of thought, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Shirley. We're going to take one last question, and then we're going to move on. Okay, I see Lou. Lou, can you please unmute? Thanks so much.
Yeah, so my question is around, we've been talking about the 1%, the property tax, but what about the spiritual covenant of giving the land back to the First Nation should the church no longer be using the land? I haven't heard much conversation about that, and
Yeah.
I wonder if you could speak to that a little bit more, given the
Yeah.
likely future of many of our churches in maybe no longer using their space in the
Right.
future.
Yeah, and the reason that Rick suggested that was my answer to his question: do the churches pay property taxes? And I said no. So it's already unentangled from that whole property tax regime and the land title stuff. So it's property exempt land, and Six Nations is exempt from Canadian and Ontario taxation too. So one of the things in the dialogue that has gone on with Rick and I and the churches is that we said we could imagine, because Canada is so reticent to return the land to reserve status, that perhaps there could be a joint management board made up of church folk and Six Nations folk who hold the land in trust for Six Nations, maintaining the tax exempt status. So land trusts is another part of the conversation that we're coming up with. And so that's one way to strategically to deal with Canada's reticence. So yeah, these are good questions. I'm glad that we're able to cover them.
Thanks so much, Lou. And thank you, Adrian, for responding to all those questions. I'm going to pass it on to you to continue our program with communion.
And so everyone, now is the time. If you haven't got your communion elements out, now is a good time to get them and have them ready. And our communion liturgy is a brief liturgy. We will start with Adrian I think, unless I misunderstood, Adrian, if you can just share a little bit about
Yes.
how and why strawberries and
Yeah. When we first conceived this idea, the Six Nations community has, in the traditional community, they have a day-long strawberry Thanksgiving ceremony. There's a bunch of things that happen during the day, and it all begins with a Haudenosaunee Thanksgiving address. And in that address, there is a thanking of what we call our first fruits, the strawberry. And it's a recognition of God's provision, Creator's provision for our people. And when we first invited churches to come and talk with us about the spiritual covenant in 2007 and 2008, we said, okay, like this is a solidarity thing. So communion is a way in which Christians express their solidarity with one another. So we thought, okay, let's have it during strawberry time and give thanks for strawberries. So that's why we open with a Haudenosaunee Thanksgiving address in English and focus in on the strawberry. So we did that. And then we were talking about the spiritual covenant and observe communion together as an act of, solidarity for justice. The elements that I have here, the plate and the chalice, are gifts from Sterling Avenue Mennonite Church. They were specially fired for our event and were gifted to us this past time at Rockaway Mennonite. And so we're making use of it here in this communion. And so go ahead, Therese.
So, friends, in the presence of Creator and Spirit, we pray, may what we are about to do draw us together in solidarity for justice. And we celebrate using the words of St. Paul in 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verses 23 to 26. This is our scripture. These are our words of institution. And I invite you to hold now in your hand the bread. As St. Paul wrote, "For I received from the Lord what I passed on to you. The Lord Jesus, on the night he was betrayed, took bread, and when he had given thanks, he broke it and said, 'This is my body, which is for you. Do this in remembrance of me.' Let us eat bread together." And together, let us hold the cup. Paul continues in saying, "In the same way, after supper, he took the cup, saying, 'This cup is the new covenant in my blood. Do this whenever you drink it in remembrance of me. For whenever you eat this bread and drink this cup, you proclaim the Lord's death until he comes.'" Let us drink together. And let us pray. O God, we have received and celebrated the Christ in our midst. May what we have done here and the blessing we have received draw us together in Christ. May it strengthen us to be the body of Christ. May it strengthen us to go out and share in new ways the presence of Christ. May it strengthen us to connect and heal, to reach out in reconciliation. May it strengthen us to receive the gifts that the Spirit gives in and through us, ourselves, and one another, and to share as Christ calls us to. Creator God, may it be so. Amen. So friends, we invite you to look for, and if you're able to make it, to the full Strawberry Thanksgiving and Communion in June, on June 13th. We encourage you to do so.
And also, this has been an ongoing question that people bring to myself and to anybody who is kind of sharing the knowledge of any kind of Indigenous knowledge in the area, is what do we do now? Or how can we continue this journey? And so after that event last year, Sarah Augustine was a part of a follow-up to our event and said, let's get together and talk about organizing for repair. What can we do after we've heard an issue of justice? How can we work together? What are we going to do? So there was an online group that got together to continue to be blessed by Sarah. Now in October, she is also going to be end of September, I think it is, October the 1st. Her and I will be talking together at Shantz Mennonite Church, and we'll be talking about the whole idea of following up on justice issues like that. But also, this organizing for repair is a six session online learning series that's an aim to equip us to engage our faith communities in ongoing ways in response to the invitation to the spiritual covenant. It draws on the teachings of Sarah Augustine. She's a very good writer and teacher, and experiences of local churches and community groups. So Sterling can tell their story, and other churches that have already responded can tell their stories. And it will be facilitated by Nancy Dykstra and Judy Miedema and the Mennonite Centre Committee Ontario. And if your church or community is ready to take a tangible action, but needs some help to get started, this learning series is for you. They will meet on 6 Thursday evenings, starting Thursday, November the 6th, and just following up that effort to organize for repair, do something about it together as a group of people. And we'll send you this information. Therese will send this in an email with the links for being able to sign up for that. Also, another thing that we do with the Christian Reformed Church is that we have an eight-month learning journey where people read, listen to videos, do a sacred pause event on their own, or walk in the forest with other people in a group, to, after learning about some issue, have a time of reflection and kind of group dynamics in reflecting on that journey. So that happens during the month. And then once a month for 2 hours, the people gather together, and then we simply ask the question, what's going through your mind? What are you feeling about this? What questions maybe you have about what you've been learning this month? So we go all the way from creation stories of Indigenous people to doctrine of discovery and Indian residential schools and colonialism in general, and all the things that have happened. We also touch on the church's responses to the TRC calls to action, the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, et cetera, lots of things like that. And this program is called Hearts Exchanged, because Ray Aldred said in 2000, he said, with churches asking, what can we do? Ray says, well, I can give you a bunch of techniques. He says, but the best thing that he says really works is to exchange hearts. That is, listen long enough to one another till you're moved by the stories of one another, and solidarity comes out of that exchanging of hearts. So you can also sign up for this as well. We have ecumenical cohorts, and if there's enough people in your particular church, at least 5 or 6 people in your church, you can have an in-person session and go through the curriculum. but you'll need to sign up because the learning materials are all online on the Thinkific platform. And again, we will send a link for that if you're interested in it. So last year we had an ecumenical cohort. This year we'll have another ecumenical cohort. And it's just another way to say, you know, the journey for a lot of people is just beginning. People are just learning what to do now. And it's something that helps people to say, okay, now I know a little bit more about the journey. And we really want to coach people too, to then connect to their local communities, because, you know, there are all kinds of people there, and there are survivors of Indian residential schools. And if they hear that you're from the church, they'll curse you out, because they've been wounded by the church, and they may not be ready for you, or, you know, you may have to sit down for a long time having coffee to get to know somebody, and for them to get to know you before they begin to trust you. And then there's people that really want to talk to you. People like Nations Uniting, they want you to come to their place. They want to talk about the issues. And, you know, the people who have been to the spiritual covenant, they're having their conversations in their churches, and, you know, and people are interested in that. And I'll say this to you, in the CRC, it's mostly white, you know, Canadians. It's increasingly immigration, people of color, Black, and Indigenous people who are not self-identified. There was so much shame really put on Indigenous people. They were, you know, strapped and whipped, and yardstick rulers on their heads and hands for speaking their language in the residential schools. So a lot of shame was put on Indigenous identity. And so the leader of our Canadian Indigenous Ministries Committee in the Christian Reformed Church in Canada, Marlene Walters, that was her. So she hid her identity for most of her life. And it wasn't until 2019, when in a Christian Reformed Canadian National Gathering in Edmonton, where Harold Rocher, another a 60s Cree man, was playing a drum. And when he played the drum, and Marlene heard that, as she was, it was the call to worship, and she was coming into this Christian Reformed church meeting, and something inside of Marlene woke up, and she began to own her identity as Indigenous. She's from the Chilcotin people in British Columbia, and she is a powerhouse now. She got a Master of Theological Studies from NAITS, an Indigenous Learning Community, and so she's the very strong female Indigenous leader of the committee that guides my work here. And so, you know, that kind of affirmation of our identity, you know, fostered wonderful changes in her. So there's many people like that who only need to hear, you know, the drum. They need to hear the Indigenous voice in the church, and they'll come out of the woodwork, because there's been so much shame that's been a part of what the church did. And, you know, and again, I don't say that to make people feel bad. That's just reality. And I face the rejection of our community over what the church did to our people. I face the ire and the rejection and the pushback. I didn't do it, but I face it on your behalf. And I do my best to be Jesus back, and not, you know, I'm a follower of Jesus, and I'm going to do my best to follow him in those tough places too. So anyways, um, get to know us. I'm a nice guy. Our people are good people. The folks at Grand River, they're good people. And the more you get to know them, the more you'll say, yes, that's true. And come to our communities, come to our churches and visit us. Because there's almost 20 United churches that are Indigenous communities in Ontario and the United Church. So,
Adrian, I have a
Yep.
question here. Sorry to
Sure.
interrupt you. It's Michelle Pettick speaking,
Yeah.
tech host for this event.
Yeah.
So Nancy Dykstra has asked a question here. Adrian mentioned Nations Uniting wanting to connect with us. Could we also send a link to Nations Uniting sharing circle to this group, or perhaps more appropriately to Rhonda Johns? Their
Yeah.
next session is next Monday.
Yeah, that's good.
Is that okay?
Therese,
Yep.
I think you've got all of that info.
Okay, so we're all good for that?
Yeah, yeah.
Thanks, Nancy, for the question. I appreciate it. Thank you for letting me interrupt, Adrian.
Yeah, no problem. And Therese, I don't know if you have anything further in the closing, but I just want to say thank you to everybody now Algoa, which means big thanks. And glad to be able to share this with this. I go to churches all the time and talk about this story and many other kinds of stories, really, because I was called from my mother's womb to do what I'm doing. She prayed for me before I was born and said, I want another son. I want him to follow you, and I want him to help our people. So I'm ready to do that.
Thank you, Adrian. Thank you for answering that call and living into it. And thank you for coming, sharing history and hopes, and inviting us to action, and in particular, inviting us to action within our Christian calling. Uh, and as a non-Indigenous person, I am particularly grateful for the energy that it takes to be offering this kind of a presentation and to be calling those of us who are non-Indigenous again and again and telling the story again and again until it sinks in. So deep, heartfelt appreciation for your offering of energy and passion and faithfulness. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
And thank you to everybody who joined us. I will be sending out an email that has additional information as well as a link to a brief feedback form. I just ask simple questions. What was most helpful? What was least helpful? Is there anything you'd like to hear more about? And do you have any other comments? Putting your name is optional. It's just those questions. You can think about them now. When the email comes, please click the link if you feel so moved to offer some feedback. And thank you again. Thank you to Michelle Pettick, who offered us the tech support, and to John Ager, her very capable assistant in the tech support world. Thank you. And again, Adrian, thank you. Blessings.